This is our Women on Mission panel. So I know that you've been spending a lot of time, first and foremost, receiving the gift of who you are. Have you received that in a deeper way this week? Oh, it's so good. Like that is the core of everything, right? And then you've started to discern the gifts that you've been given, yeah? Have you been learning new things about yourself and your gifts? Good. And now we're going to start looking outwards because sadly, and we don't want to talk about it, tomorrow you're going to be commissioned to go out and change the world. And when I came to the forum in 2016, one of the most impactful pieces of the forum for me was panel discussions like this. Because we're all so diverse, and we're all really called to be the Lord's heart in the world in a very unique way. And I'm just so privileged to be joined by you guys are going to be floored, such incredible women who have really received the gift of who they are and really discerned how God has called them to love and serve others in this world. And so we have just a really amazing, diverse lineup for you all. They're going to introduce themselves in a second. Just a reminder, they're going to introduce themselves, and then you're going to be given the opportunity to ask questions of them. This is your opportunity to really step out and be bold and ask some questions that you're thinking. So there's a text number as a reminder up there. That's going to filter in through me, and then after they introduce themselves, we'll be able to ask those questions. That sound good? Okay, so let's start with our first presenter, Anna.
Thank you. Well, my name is Anna Halpine. 25 years ago, probably before most of you were born, I founded the World Youth Alliance. It was a reaction of conscience to fight the movement using the UN to create a global population surge and to use the UN to establish an international human right to abortion. So 25 years later, we still continue that mission by training and equipping young people to understand the language of advocacy and policy, how to understand how to defend the dignity of the person at every level of policy in their schools, nationally and internationally. And we've now developed some of the tools that we were missing at the time, which is really alternative programs that often give a false idea of the human person, particularly in the areas of gender, sex ed, and women's health. And so we now have the Human Dignity Curriculum, which is a human anthropology content, and FEM. And some of you know about FEM, and this summer, Teen FEM and Teen Men will be launched for schools. So that's the work that we have done, and looking forward to any questions you have.
Hi, I'm Kate Fassbender. I attended the forum in 2021 as an attendee. I was one of those 2021 cohort shifts. And I work in aging and dementia, and my mission really started when I was quite young. When all the kids were saying, I want to be an astronaut, I want to be a ballet dancer, I want to be a teacher. When my parents asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, I said, I just be Katie. Little did I know how hard that would be and where that statement would take me. So today I play 3 roles essentially. I have a faculty position at the Avila Institute of Gerontology, which is the educational arm of the Carmelites in Germantown, New York. I also have a for-profit organization called the Dementia Letters Project, which used to be fully life enrichment programming, contracted, and education, and is now shifting to be more program-based, so single programs. But my main focus, and what relates to all of you, what is my nonprofit called the Hem of Christ. And what it is I accompany those living with dementia and their care partners on their dementia journey, helping them remain in the fullness of their Catholic faith. Not only through education, but also finding out how can we help them go to confession, continue to go to Mass, receive the sacraments, have retreats, have time to just be children of God instead of a dementia diagnosis. So that is what a lot of my work kind of focuses on. And I've always had a ministry element to what I do, but my action plan was actually to take that and turn it into the nonprofit that I have today. So that's me.
Hi everyone, my name is Valentina Imhoff. I live in southern Florida, so the weather here is fantastic, because back home it is very, very hot and humid. I run a Catholic career coaching business called Fiat Career Coaching, and my tagline is, when we say yes to God, we change the world. And I wholeheartedly believe that. When we give the Lord our little yeses or our big yeses, it has ripple impact on our family, our friends, and those around us. And I started this, it was mainly through a call-in by the Lord, because I was really confused, and I was like, Lord, you've given me a lot of skills, and I have my master's, but what in the world did you create me for? And through a lot of discernment, he led me to help others discern their callings. And so that's what I do. So I help women discern. I pray with them through inner healing, because I've just learned that a lot of what prevents us from being who we are is through the wounds that we've experienced in our past. And through the healing that I have experienced, it just gives me so much joy to lead others through that. Aside from that, I am a stay-at-home mom with a 1-year-old. Well, he's going to turn 1 on Friday. And he's here, which is really exciting. And so he is my joy, as well as the business. And my husband, too. Don't tell him.
Hi everyone, my name is Felicitas, Brugo, Onetti. I think I'm the only one here that didn't start a nonprofit, but that's okay. I work for the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, right across the street. I handle the anti-human trafficking portfolio for the conference. I'm a social worker. I'm a Seaway alumni. Do we have any alumni here from Catholic? No? 1, 2, 3, 4, okay. So I handle the portfolio for the conference, and we do everything from migration related to child trafficking, online exploitation, labor trafficking. I studied social work, and I'm a clinical social worker as well, and I started working in this sphere when I was working with migrant communities in South Florida. I'm from Argentina originally, so really connecting the impact of being an immigrant that was privileged to come here with parents that were able to bring me here legally, and working with undocumented children and families was really kind of the inspiration for my work. And then I moved into work in a women's prison and substance use rehabilitation with federal inmates. And I ended up back in DC working for the conference on a variety of issues within the church, especially creating education programs and policy, advocacy, and legislation on protecting children, kind of that pro-life ethic as it is just in all stages of life as well, advocating for survivors and kind of representing the church in that way. And I think that's
amazing. Impressive, right? Beautiful, beautiful women. So go ahead, and if you have questions based off that, start submitting them. In the meantime, if you're anything like me, when I came to Given, my action plan was to start a Bible study, or to write a Bible study, and I ended leaving Given with the Lord's plan, naively, to launch a nonprofit. So some of you may be kind of in this period of discernment of, okay, Lord, what are you calling me to do with your gifts? So I would love to hear, maybe we'll just go in reverse order. You've touched on this a little bit, but how did you really discern your current role? What did that look like?
That's a good question. I think for me, service was where I was meant to be, serving the poor, and I think just really seeing the face of Jesus in the migrant and the vulnerable and the needy. And I don't think I thought about anything other than that when I was called to be in this position. And I actually interviewed for this position and I didn't get it. And, kind of asking, where am I supposed to go now? I had, just done social work was where I was happiest and kind of ministering to people in that way. And this was very different. I was working mostly in therapy, and so this was kind of the macro side of social work, and I didn't get the position. So then I was just like, what now? What, I have to pay rent? What am I supposed to do? And then I got a call 2 days later that person didn't take the job. And, they said, if you want it, you can have it. And I, of course, said yes. And I just didn't doubt that I'm called to be, I think, with the poor and the needy in that way. And I think that was where I could always be unapologetically myself. And Jesus wanted that for me. I hope that answers the question.
That's a very good response. For me, it was similarly, I wanted to help people. When people would ask me, what do you want to be when you grow up? I was like, I don't know, but I want to help. And I wanted to teach. And so I started college with like a triple major and a minor. Because I was like, I want to do it all. And quickly realized that was actually unrealistic. But I ended up studying business and education and journalism. And then I dropped the journalism one because I was like, I actually don't want to be a reporter. But now I have a podcast, so it really all works together. But I remember I did a lot of different jobs. I worked for the Nebraska Department of Economic Development for a while. I worked in oil and gas and training and development. I worked for an employee engagement survey company where we basically worked with companies all over the world, Fortune 500 and Fortune 100 companies, to ask employees what makes them happy and how they can be happy at work. And a lot of the survey results were people were saying, I hate my job. I hate coming to work. I really want to love it, but this isn't for me, or there was a lot of sadness. And at the time, as an analyst, I was reading this and I was like, I can relate. And I was like, Lord, what do I do about this? I can't reach these thousands of employees and say, you need Jesus, God loves you. But the Lord, just through lots of prayer, this is going to sound bizarre, but I remember just sitting in my room one day and I was like, Lord, what do I do? What did you create me for? And then the thought career coach popped in my head, which is, again, bizarre because the Lord doesn't normally speak to me in that way. And I just immediately dismissed it because I'm like, that's crazy. But then I began to reflect on my life, and over the course of many years, I'd helped several women with their resumes, helped them prepare for interviews, helped them just talk through their career changes, and it worked. They actually got jobs. They found jobs that they liked, and I loved talking to them about it. And I was like, well, maybe this could be a possibility. And I wasn't ready to quit my job yet because a solid salary is pretty wonderful. But after several years of just, again, discerning and just setting feelers out, I started the business just very quietly. And I started helping women little by little. And again, it was successful. And so I felt the Lord saying, okay, now's the time to take this leap of faith. And it was so scary. Probably the scariest thing I've ever done is to quit a really, really well-paying job for the unknown. And the Lord has blessed it in ways that I have never would have imagined. This is turning into a really long response, but I remember I quit my job, and then a couple weeks later, I met my now husband, and he's in the military, and one of the first things he was like, hey, would you be open to being a stay-at-home mom? And I was like, so you will take care of our family? I was like, yes. Anyways, long story short, yes, the Lord has used my yes in ways, again, that I didn't expect. And I've been able to work with women and bless them, but it has looked completely different than what I ever imagined. I would never have imagined this life that I have now, but I'm so grateful that the Lord just weaved all the different experiences together.
And my discernment story started when I was really, really little. I can see the breadcrumbs throughout my entire upbringing that led me to work in aging and dementia. The first being when I was 2 years old, I'd go over to my grandparents' house. My grandparents would be there with arms wide open, but I ran straight to my great-grandma and said, great, great, and spent time with her and wanted to be with her, and then come to my grandparents and then my parents. I was the one who loves playing with my peers, but I would rather sit at the picnic table with the grandparents and the parents than play with my peers. That's just who I was and who I always have been. And then in 6th grade, I started volunteering at a care community that was associated with where my grandfather was living in the memory care. And it was the first thing that ever came easy to me. I am someone, I have had to work 110% for everything. Every grade, every achievement in music, in art, in theater, I have had to give it my all, except for spending time with those living with dementia. I could just be. It was almost like I could rest in that experience. And so I've always known that I've wanted to work in aging and dementia. It has, much like a common story that you'll hear, it has taken many different paths. But the path that led me to nonprofit life is I call myself the reluctant nonprofit founder because I had never any intention. I come from a family of serial entrepreneurs, but nonprofit life was not something I wanted to enter because I saw the volume of work it takes to maintain that and keep it sustainable. And right after I graduated from college, a lot of people were saying, oh, you should start a nonprofit. You should start a nonprofit. And I was going, yeah, and what? Why? Why does the world need yet another nonprofit when it felt like they were popping up all around me? And about 8 years later, I was sitting in Mass, and it was the gospel of the hem of Christ, where the woman is reaching out to touch Christ's hem. And I call it my frying pan moment. It was a moment when God had been suddenly speaking to me all the way up to that point. But at that point, the Holy Spirit came in the middle of the gospel and hit me upside the head with a frying pan and said, you will start a nonprofit, wake up, and you will call it the Hem of Christ, and I'll tell you later why. And it was a unique experience. I've yet to have another one quite that intense, but that is what made me go, wait a minute, I have gifts here that I'm not using, and people are coming to me saying, how can I pray with my loved one with dementia? My loved one is asking to go to Mass. Can they still go to Mass? Can they still receive the sacraments? And my answer is always yes, and I realized there was a gap, and I could fill that gap with my gifts and help them continue to live in that fullness of the faith.
I agonized. I didn't want to do it. I was studying music, and I thought, I'm willing to be poor, but honorably poor. Working on all these issues is just a social pariah. So it took a long time, and over the course of that first year, I finally said, I think the smallest yes, but God heard, and as many people here know, is not outdone in generosity. So we don't always think we want to do something. There are many hard things that demand a big cost. We used to have a rule that we would never hire anyone who wanted to work with us because that was like a sign of probably mental instability. But but we've refined our selection process now. And there are obviously lots of wonderful young people ready to stand. So that's how I got into this.
Amazing. The Lord's voice for each of us is just as unique as we are. So you can see some themes, you know, a door opening or a door shutting, a risky ask. All of these women have taken great risk in their lives. A whisper, a frying pan moment. But it's a beautiful process learning the voice of the Lord and learning how he speaks to your heart specifically and how he'll call you specifically. And I think all of these women can agree that they can't deny the call. It was very clear. And stepping into that brought challenges, but I imagine some freedom as well. So thank you for that encouragement. Anna, why don't you keep the mic? What have you seen in your work on mission that has flourished because of your femininity and womanhood?
Oh, wow.
Good question, huh?
I don't know what to say. You get this question at places like this. Yeah. And over the years I've thought about it, and in my opinion, the person who most understood women was John Paul. So, but I think that there's maybe one type of, I don't know. It's a hard thing to sort of categorize. Women are this and women are that. You know, what is a woman? We don't know anymore. But
in this room we do, right?
One of the things that I have observed in my own life, and I think it tends to be a gift of women, is like a gift of synthesis. It's not just, some people will say women are very practical. Some women are. But I think trying to create order and solutions. So that's one thing I found in my life anyway, is trying to synthesize a bigger problem and identify a possible pathway forward where we could build something and move together. That's obviously not unique to women. That's the best I have for you.
I love it. Feel free if you all want to comment. I have other questions though. That was a good question. That was a good question. Just as a point of encouragement, all of these women up here are extremely feminine, huh? Yeah. And they're all in their own unique way expressing that. The fact that we were created as women makes us feminine. And they're going to express that in a different way. And God has entrusted through their femininity and their womanhood, has entrusted them with this unique mission to lead as a woman. And so, I mean, we've already seen it. I mean, it's hard to put to words, but you have the examples sitting right here in front of us, so it's beautiful. Why don't we pass the mic all the way down, Felicitas? What can we do to combat human trafficking, even if it's not our whole job or ministry? How can we help? Any advice?
Yeah, there's human trafficking is such a global scale issue, and people, tend to think that it's so far away from something that we can all help with, but it's a lot closer to our reality than we think it is. And there's a variety of ways in which human trafficking is prevalent. And to kind of give an overview, human trafficking is this like umbrella term where we break it into labor trafficking and sexual exploitation or sex trafficking. Other people use the word prostitution, things like that, but it's always going to be exploitation. Some more tangible, I think, ways is, always raising awareness on the issue, bringing difficult conversations into normal spaces where we can share the realities of the world. It's really nice to be comfortable and feel safe, but it's not the reality for a lot of people. And so when we can kind of bring that, those difficult conversations to the table, I think it always helps, then more people pray for those victims and survivors, more people invest time in survivor work or, buying books from survivors or things like that and supplementing those. Some of the other, I guess, more tangible ways is, look into the clothing brands you're buying, look into, supermarkets and what they're selling. When we think of labor trafficking, they are very exploited when it comes to, seafood and clothing, and child labor is very, prominent in those sectors of supply chains, and always kind of being conscious. We talk a lot about sustainability and clothes or food, but there's also humans that are, working overtime for your $10 T-shirt, and sometimes the comfort of cost is not the comfort, for the people that are suffering through it. And those are some, I guess, more realistic ways, but, there's plenty of resources out there online, and if anyone has any other questions or wants more information, I'm happy to share my email. And I do a lot of education presentations and stuff for organizations and institutions, and I think that's more of a tangible way. But I think just, reading about issues that are hard to digest is probably one of the better ways that we can kind of combat this issue, and keep praying for people in situations of violence and conflict.
Thank you. I'm going to direct this to Kate, but then I think Anna and Valentina, you can comment as well, because we're getting a couple questions about this whole idea of a nonprofit. So Kate, because you've started, it sounds like a for-profit and nonprofit, how do you discern between the two? And with that, there can be guilt associated with getting compensation for something that helps others. So can you just speak into that? And then Valentina and Anna, please feel free to comment on your experience of starting a nonprofit, some of those steps. Just any advice that you have would be great.
Yeah. Well, first of all, just because you do work for your church or that's infused by faith or because you are a woman of faith doesn't mean that it has to be a nonprofit. It can also be a for-profit. That you shouldn't feel guilty about any level of salary that you may be earning or owner's draw that you may be pulling. our faith does not dictate that we must all work for nonprofits with minimal salary. So that's the first thing to keep in mind. And for me, how I discerned what to do, it was really, okay, what are the services that I want to offer? Who do I want to offer them to? And how do I want to fund each one? So I know that in education, in life enrichment, I can charge something and that's going to be accepted. But I knew on the ministry side, working with families who likely have also put themselves in financial jeopardy to care for their loved ones with dementia, it'd be important for me to be able to apply for grants so that I could keep my costs to them low. And so I have determined what path to take because of that. And so for the Dementia Letters Project, I know that I can go into a large care community and not take advantage of them. That's very, very different. But I could charge a reasonable fee for the services I was offering, and they wouldn't blink an eye at it. But I also know that there are some other small parishes that I couldn't charge what my actual fee would be because that's not in their parish budget, but that doesn't mean they're any less worthy of what I have to offer and the gifts I can share with them. And so I have also determined on my for-profit side a sliding scale of operating. And so that has allowed me to kind of have room for play in how I'm structured and how I work. I think, does that answer your question? I hope.
I think this is such a great question. Before I started Fiat Career Coaching, I had the same question, do I start a nonprofit or a for-profit? And I went to my spiritual director and asked for advice, and he's not a businessman. And I said to him, I was like, well, I'm going to help women with their career and then potentially be praying with them. How can I charge for prayer? And he's like, Valentina, you can charge for prayer. I was like, but, and he actually brought to mind this verse of St. Paul says, a laborer deserves their pay. And so I decided to make it actually a for-profit. And actually, as a business owner, it's a constant battle, not battle, but discernment of my prices. Because I am of the opinion of I want people to be able to afford a career coaching, and I know some people charge thousands of dollars, and I'm like, well, I wouldn't be able to afford that, so I wouldn't do it myself. And so what I found is, one, seeing what others charge, doing more market research, but then settling on a price for the service that is fair, but the amount of work that I put in. Because I know that I will spend hours on someone's resume, on their LinkedIn page, and it has to make sense for our family, for me to be away from my son. So that's kind of how I justify it. Like, okay, well, this is like hours that I could either be napping with him or taking care of the home that I need to be able to justify in some way. But then also more practically, I've been blessed with good clients. Like I recently worked with a woman, she's a film director out in New Mexico, and she was looking to change her LinkedIn page, and so I spent a lot of time on her page, and she was really happy with it, and she was like, you know what, I'm going to pay you more. I was like, what? So she's like, yeah, I'm going to pay you more. So she ended up paying me 3 times more of what I had charged her. She's like, yeah, because your work is valuable. And I was like, wow. So then it helps me see, okay, maybe I need to reconsider what I do charge. But then for clients who maybe can't afford it, I do a lot of free consultations where they come, we talk for 30 minutes, and I kind of help them, and then they go on their way. And so in that sense, the Lord's helping me see that He's going to bring the right client who can afford what I can help them with, but I don't have to stress so much about that. I know this probably wasn't the question, but one thing I just want to encourage you is the Lord has a plan for whatever apostolate that you start. And so He's going to bring you the right people at the right time, in the right way. And so for me as a mom, it's a lot of the time is like, Lord, you know my schedule, you know what the capacity of our family, and so you bring clients when you want me to have clients. And if you don't want me to have clients, I'm not going to have clients. And so just living with that freedom has taken a lot of pressure off, because I guess there's a mentality of like, I have to do so much, and then the Lord's like, no, I will bring you the right person at the right time in the right way. And by the way, I'll even give you extra without even you expecting it. So.
Well, some nonprofits are truly nonprofits, so trying to worry about too high salaries has never been a problem for us. I think the nonprofit was for me not we never thought about the nonprofit. We knew we were not trying to make any money. We were just trying to accomplish a mission. And these things take a lot of work to set up, to maintain. So I think that on the nonprofit side, at least, the primary question always has to be, what is the mission I'm trying to accomplish? And what am I willing to give to accomplish that mission? And then the nonprofit is merely a vehicle for other people to come alongside you and help to accomplish that mission goal. So be warned. It's more work than you think. It takes more time than you think. You have this great idea for a mission, and now you're dealing with legal forms and financial forms and reporting, and you have to do it well. So those are real considerations to pause in and maybe help you to pause in really identifying the pathways you want to go for. But I think for a nonprofit, at least, everything is dominated by the mission, and you do whatever it takes to make that mission happen. And if you're willing to serve in that way, everything falls into place. You just put in the extra hours, you put in the extra work, you're focused on something beyond yourself, in front of yourself, bigger than yourself, and that's the reason to keep going.
Amen. By the Lord's grace. What I love about our panel is, I know we've gotten a lot of questions about nonprofit, for-profit. Everybody here is in different spheres, right? We're all called to be on mission, whether that's in our current workforce, whether that's starting a nonprofit, whether that's starting a for-profit, whether that's just being a really good mom, a really good lawyer. Wherever you are, you're called to be a missionary. And so I think sometimes we can get caught with the luster of, well, am I supposed to launch this new thing? The Lord will start small and he'll build whatever. But where you are right now, trust that that's your mission field. Trust that's your mission field. I just don't want you to struggle with comparison, These women are amazing and impressive, but God's called them to what they're doing, and then they're given the grace to grit through it, as they all have. So praise God for that. Speaking of grit, and I'd love to hear your various answers if you're all willing to answer this question. There was a question asked, how does your spiritual life sustain you, especially in the midst of the difficulties you face, whether it's really difficult issues you're dealing with, whether it's running a business, whether it's just discouragement? How does your spiritual life and your prayer life sustain you through that? You can start if you want, Anna, and pass it down.
Well, I think it's like most things in life that when it's very difficult, you realize how fully you are sustained by God alone, because nothing else is there anymore. And that's the reminder we have to keep close to our hearts and in our minds when things seem to be going well. So those difficult times can help us to rely on the Lord, to trust only on the Lord, and to form those habits that are essential for maintaining the peace and the foundation that's required for every day, even when we may think we're a little more able to move on our own merits.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, for me, I have a surprising God surprised me in how he is sustaining me spiritually through all of this. I, for a while, was discerning religious life. And when I discerned out of it, a piece of my heart broke. But by keeping my heart and my mind and my eyes open, he was able to spiritually support me through answering my prayer in a way I didn't know how to even pray that prayer. And so it was actually here at Given that a prayer was answered. So when I discerned out of religious life, like I said, a piece of my heart was broken. And I still, I was torn. I couldn't wait for marriage. Yet I was also sad that there was this life that I had dreamed about for a while that would never come to fruition. And while at the Given in 2022, I met Sister Mary, who happens to be with us. And she connected me with Sister Peter, who is the executive director of AIG, Avila Institute of Gerontology. And through that, I was able to join their faculty. And in joining their faculty, I've been able to accompany them and work with them on a program that's called Sisters Aging Well Together. It's a fantastic program that helps religious orders age. How do we age in community? And what I realized while sitting at one of these conferences is that God was answering my prayer, because while he was not calling me to wear that habit, he was calling me in a different way to be a part of their community and to accompany religious life in a way that was far greater than I could if I entered that community or another community that I was looking at. And so just that reminder has spiritually fed me and propelled me forward in ways that I never could have dreamt for. And like I said, it was an answered prayer that I didn't even know how to pray. And so I think, when you're in your own work here at Given and beyond, look for those moments when God is answering prayers you didn't know how to pray, and then thank him for it. Because those are little gems that we can carry with us until the day we die.
That's beautiful. For me as well, my spiritual life, faith life, is the most essential aspect of my life. I kind of joke that, I love Jesus more than my husband, which I guess is the right order. But mostly because as I pray with the women that I help discern, if my prayer life isn't right, then I can't help them. I'm basically giving them a false or empty promise. And so it's really wonderful having the faith be part of the business, is because it keeps me in check with our Lord. And so I try as much as I can to go to daily mass with my son, and we do our family holy hour every week. And just trying to every moment to just offer up everything to him, and as I pray for my clients. But one thing that the Lord has recently brought to our lives is I'll be starting spiritual direction school actually this Friday. Just as I work with different women, I'm realizing that I need more tools in my toolkit, and just wanting to understand the spiritual life even better. And so I'm really looking forward to being able to learn more so I can help and assist others. But yeah, if not for prayer, I would not be here. The Lord is just every breath in my lungs and every breath in your lungs. And I'm just so grateful. And I want to just a little plug. It's really important who you marry. Before I came here, I was super amen. I was really nervous about being up here, which I don't know why, because you're all really lovely. So my husband, he prayed with me, and then right before this call, he prayed with me again, and I'm like, it's so good to have that. So I just encourage you, pick a good man if you're called to that.
Yeah, I think you all shared really useful things like prayer and that discernment. I think I'm still figuring out how to incorporate that, especially when it comes to kind of such violent topics and issues. Working for the Bishops' Conference, it's very Catholic space, and I get to go to daily mass, right? You would think, with all the priests that are there, that we would have daily mass, which we do. So it's really nice to have a community at work that is, focuses on, Christ specifically. And I think the sacraments really are what gets me through most of it, right? Receiving the Eucharist for me is something that just kind of takes you the rest of the way. It's very interesting, but then it can be very difficult to understand why people harm people the way that they do, and grasping, that reality. And strangely, I think there's some weird comfort in knowing that Jesus also weeps with us when we are doing this work. And, we constantly get criticized, whether at the Bishops' Conference or service providers that are faith-based, for our faith being a weakness in this sphere when we're working with the United Nations or with the government, it's like, oh, these Catholics that, do this or do that. And we sometimes don't get, a seat at the table because we're pro-life or, we have certain views that kind of take us away from maybe what's happening in the world. And I think our faith, and being Catholic is what makes us the strongest advocate for people experiencing violence or other different forms. So I guess my point is just that that's the strength that kind of keeps me going, at least, and having this faith and prayer and the sacraments and kind of Jesus advocating and weeping just as much as we are is what I think gets me through most of the things and the work that I do here. And I think always remembering that it's not about me, and if I didn't do this work, it's one less person perhaps advocating for people in situations of violence and abuse. So I kind of just put God at the center, and it's not just, there shouldn't be an applause for me. It should all be for the survivors that go through it, or kind of Jesus taking me through it all. So
thank you.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Valentina, as a career coach, what is something you wish women in the workforce knew about finding and building their careers?
Ooh, that's a really good question.
Right?
Ooh. I would say you don't have to figure it all out because it's probably going to change. And that's okay. Just think of the people that they have probably had multiple jobs in different spheres and different just fields, and it's okay. I think sometimes we have this mentality of like, I need to have my life figured out right now, and this is what I need to do, and if I deviate from it, then I'm a failure, and no one's gonna love me, or maybe that's what I think. But really, it's okay. Most people don't know what they're doing. Most people are gonna change their mind. I'll give an example. My mom, she's a nurse. She's an operating room nurse, and she's been one for 30 years. And one day, don't quote me. I mean, don't tell her I told you this. She's gonna kill me. She was like, maybe I'll be a truck driver. And I was like, what? Mom. She's like, why not? And I was like, please don't. I don't think she was actually serious, but it made me think of, okay, someone close to a retirement, they can change their mind, and it's actually okay. So that's what I would say. It's okay to change your mind, and it's okay to try new things, and it's okay to not have it all figured out, because you're not supposed to. And it's all a journey with the Lord, and He will use every little bit of it. Every last job that you thought was pointless, maybe whatever it was, the Lord is going to use even a sliver of that. And so just to take the pressure off and just to enjoy the process. I have a friend, she owns a franchise of cat hotels in California. Yeah, she's really quirky and I love her. And she was telling me that for many years she worked as an accountant in a, what was it? Some really boring insurance company. Her words, not mine. And she really, really disliked it. And she kept praying for a new job, praying for a new opportunity. And the Lord just let her stay there. And she said after the fact, after she left, it was years later, she looked back and she was like, oh, I actually needed that experience. I needed that terrible boss experience to help me to be a better manager and leader now. So I know what not to do with my employees. And so the Lord uses every aspect, whether good or bad. And so we could just all take a collective pressure off. It's really okay. You don't have to have it all figured out. And to just enjoy the process. It's okay. I'm going to repeat it myself, but enjoy the process.
Thank you for giving us permission. Did you all just relax a little bit? Yeah, just relaxing. Good. So a beautiful part of Given is that all the attendees will be given a mentor. Maybe you've already met your mentor, have you? It'll be assigned after. Okay. So my mentor was a Carmelite sister, and I still hear from her 8 years later. She'll email me every once in a while, just say she's praying for me, she's following what I'm doing. And they're just like this really beautiful relationship that's formed, and something that I really encourage you to take advantage of. In all your lives, how have mentors or other women come alongside you and really helped inspire you or support you in what you're doing? Anybody can answer.
Since I have the mic. Yes, mentorship is so critical. When I started this business, it was partly not only just from the Lord, but I needed a push from a mentor, someone I didn't even know. I had attended a Magnificat conference in New Orleans several years back, and I happened to sit next to a woman on the bus, and she was also attending the conference, and I was telling her my woes about my job, and she was telling me about how she didn't like her job for many years and then decided to start up her own bakery, and now she loves it, life. And so she was just pushing me, and she was actually the one who said, if you do this, if you launch this business, it's going to change the world. And I remember as she said that, I felt like it was Jesus speaking to me. And we instantly became friends after that. And so to this day, she reaches out. She sends me biscotti, often. And she's just helped me through the ups and downs of having a business. And then the Lord has just brought encouraging friends who wouldn't be necessarily a mentor, but have been a true source of encouragement when I've needed it, when I wanted to give up, when I've thought, oh my gosh, I had 2 views on my podcast. Should I even do this anymore? But people were like, you should do it, keep going. So yes, mentorship and mentors really have made a difference in my life. And yes, I think it's so wonderful that it's part of the given process.
Yeah, in my life, I've had a number of both formal and informal mentors. And I have had these people that I call pillars in my life, that if I were to remove them, everything would crumble. Some of these people are family, some of these people are parish priests, friends that I went to school with. But I also I deliberately, for my nonprofit, in addition to the required board of directors, created a spiritual advisory committee, which are the saints that I also lean on. Saints that have inspired me, saints that have both kind of tapped on the door and peeked in and said, can I come into your life, like Saint Gianna? And saints that have kicked down the door like Padre Pio. And so in my life, I've had these saints that I've been able to lean on. Those are kind of informal mentorships that I've had. I've had people who probably don't even know my name or know that I exist, but I observe them from afar, either from across the church or even across the globe via YouTube channels and podcasts and reading their books. And then I've also had the very valuable one-on-one mentorship, both in situations such as a given mentorship and in other people who I've just gotten up to and said, I like what you're doing, can I learn from you? And so all these people are pillars of who I am personally, spiritually, and also professionally. And I encourage you all to find your own pillars throughout your life and to see your given mentor when you are assigned your given mentor, and even your small group leaders as possible pillars as you move forward on your mission.
Well, we certainly all have people in our lives that we rely on and who teach us along the way, but I'll just encourage you to enjoy the mentors that have been assigned to you. In my own life, many of the sisters here in this room have been maybe what I would call companions along the way, and those friendships and that solidarity and that common path and purpose and experience is a gift that keeps on giving. Year over year, we get closer to each other. We're living in the same kind of environment, and we've been able to share and support each other step by step along the way.
Yeah, to echo kind of that, my dad's nightmare is like what I'm doing, right? He wanted me to, I grew up in a house full of boys, and so I was like the princess of the house, and they never, understood what I was doing in social work and kind of this work that I'm doing. So I think just all I wanted to echo was having one person believe in you, whether that's, your family, your friends, or your mentors you're going to be assigned to, I think that changes everything. I think a lot of people in my life, my whole family's, real estate and business oriented, and, I have artists and creativity, and I'm probably the only social worker and probably will be for a bit. And, although they don't understand maybe what I'm doing, or it's like a hard thing to grasp for them, they just support you, and they that kind of companionship, I think, of, maybe I don't agree, or maybe they want something maybe less sad as my day-to-day. They believe in the work, and just to share that, having one person believe in the things that you can do, you'll be able to change the world, probably.
Thank you. I love to think about it like in 3 different types of relationships. We should all look for mentors. That's so important. And then we have, some of you comment on this, kind of our peers. Those are kind of on our level, whether that be career-wise or spiritually. But then the other thing I want to encourage is looking to be a mentor. You all have that capacity to be a mentor to the younger generations in different ways. And so just really thinking through those 3 roles in your own life is so, so important. We've had a couple questions kind of about vocation. How has your current vocational status, how has that influenced your mission? How has that been difficult in doing the work that you're called to? Just if anybody wants to comment on that. It's a vulnerable question. I know, I saved it for last.
Oh, wow. This is such a deep question. So as a mom, oh gosh, this is going to actually make me tear up a little bit. In a good way, but they say like when you give birth, like your whole life changes. And I didn't believe that, but it really is true. Like I went from having these grand visions of like really having this successful business, traveling the world, teaching, training, and then our son Joseph was born, and like everything was like, whoo, came down small to his face. And the Lord is just showing me that, yes, he has great plans for me, and yes, he's given me gifts, but my primary focus is our son, is our family, and everything else feeds from that, which is hard because as a super driven person, I'm like, Lord, I want to do all these things. He's like, but you also need to change the diaper. And you also need to make dinner. And so I orientate my business around our family life. And so a lot of what I do with our clients is either on the days that my husband is off work or at night when my son is asleep. And it's hard because it's forced me to give up my own will and to let go of this vision that I was so convicted that my life had to look like, to just be like, okay, God, this is what you placed in front of me. This is how you want it to look like, and this is good. And so it's a constant dying to self, and I'm still on that journey. But I'm grateful because I think it's made me I know it's made me a much better spouse, but also a much better mother and a much better business owner because it's placed things in the priority that it needs to be.
Talking about vocation, I could sit here for another 6 hours and still don't know if I'd touch on everything. But, one of the things, I mentioned earlier that I had discerned out of religious life. There was a part of me that always knew that that's not where God was calling me, because the first thing I ever remember wanting was to be a wife and to be a mother. And there was a period of time when I tried to ignore that. And now here I am, discerned out of religious life, having gone through that journey and still not yet married with a family. I've often questioned, okay, what are you doing with this time in my life? And what does it have to do with the greater call for the story of my life? And it's been a hard and difficult, very difficult journey to see your peers get married when you know that you are called to that very special relationship and that special sacrament. But what I've realized over the last few months is that maybe God is calling me to this place right now so that I can understand that widow who's now back into a transition vocation, having lived a full and beautiful life with her husband, who is now passed after a long and grueling journey of dementia. I am able to accompany her now in a way I probably wouldn't have if I jumped right into marriage. And so I always have to keep reminding myself on those days when I just am breaking down in tears, going, God, where is my husband? I already love him. I already long for him. Where is he? I have to remind myself that because of this place that I'm in right now, I can now understand another part of the life's journey, a life that often goes ignored. After the funeral, then what? For that person who has thought that they would have another 10, 15 years, but dementia stole that. So that's kind of how I think of my vocation now and how I am trying to understand why God is calling me to this chapter of my life in this vocation.
Just a word of encouragement. It's okay to ache and to long. You're going to experience that even in the married vocation, though. You're going to experience that in the religious vocation because our hearts are created in a way where we are only satisfied, that ache and that longing is only satisfied by our Lord. And I think in all these women, we see how they are exercising their femininity. We see how they're exercising their physical motherhood, but also their spiritual motherhood through their various missions and vocations. And so just a word of encouragement, you're going to ache and you're going to long. The best thing to do with that, and I think all these women can agree with me, is to point that towards the Lord. And that's, like Kate just said, that's where you gain perspective. That's where you gain perspective on it. So final question, we have a few minutes left. Any final words of advice for these young women in the room who have gone through a heart journey the last few days and are preparing to really discern and enter into the mission that God's calling them to?
Very broad question. Find something you want to give your life to. I think that touches the vocation question as well, but wake up, give something everything you have, and give a little bit more than you think you have to give.
As someone who has gone through this program, I've said each and every day when you feel discouraged or you are even looking for encouragement, know that you are in great company of now hundreds of women who have gone through Given and can understand this experience. And as you move forward in your own missions, with your own action plans, be it small or great, be it working with spotlight popular populations or the population that we run from, know that you are in the company of women who have gone through this beautiful experience both this year and in the past years, and we are journeying together in community even if we never know each other's names.
I would say just give God your yes. And I know that probably sounds cliche, but give him your yes where you are right now. So even if you know what you want to do, great, give him your yes. If you don't know what you want to do, great, give him your yes. If things are going great, give him your yes. If things are going terrible, give him your yes. Like, life is, to be a saint, from what I've read from saints, is to... You can tell I don't do this very often. Is to just accept whatever the Lord brings your way with an open hand and an open heart, and just say yes. The good times and the bad, because that's what true faithfulness is, because that's what he does to us. And so just give him your yes.
I don't really know what advice to give here, but I think to what all of you are saying, I would kind of, to embrace these gifts that we keep talking about, it's just like centering on the uniqueness that we all have, and not playing the comparison game. I think that especially for women, that we are trained to compete with one another pretty often in the workforce or in many other kind of varieties. In different sectors. Just centering the fact that it's for the Lord, and what does the Lord call us to? And this, back to that comparison game of, I'm not doing what Valentina's doing, or I'm not doing, what this person's doing, or I'm not, it's just like cut all of that out. I think that, to echo, Mother Teresa, a saint, a great saint, she, not all of us can do great things, but we can do small things with great love. And just, if you do your thing, you work the extra hour, you dedicate a little bit more while your son's asleep, while, so many things are going on, but you're doing it with the utmost love. And that virtue kind of, I think, will just give everything, will let everything fall into place. And, God sees that and we'll reward it. I think love, in my experience, is just, if you do it all in the face of love, then nothing can really go wrong.
Amen. Amen. Well, I think one of the biggest ways to combat this spirit of comparison is with celebration, is with celebrating each other, with celebrating each other's gifts. And I do believe that this room of women, if we do that one thing, will change the culture. And so please join me in celebrating these incredible women and their yeses.